There's reality where wherever the charge is inside of people determines what the ideology is going to be able to do, suggesting that the ideology, the nogginism, the nonsense is useless. It's not, there's nothing to it. It's just kind of, it's just a moot point in some type of sense. It's just the churning blather of our rationalizing left hemisphere going through its processes and all this. But really, the true focus should be on the charge. And if we are to then reason from axiomatic principles, the correct worldview, the correct perspective, correctly understood, would be to say, well, how do we build a way of thinking about the world? You could say a dutiful way of thinking about the world. How do we ritualize behaviors that increase our charge? Like, instead of all going to church, why don't we all go to the gym? Instead of all eating the sacred bread, why don't we all eat sacred, healthy diets? Instead of doing all these behaviors that cause us to ruin our charge, maybe by fasting or praying and stuff like this, why don't we focus on behaviors that increase our charge, empower us, rise our spirits up, or something like this? Instead of reading about stories that make us feel guilt and shame, such as things like killing people in the crucifixion and stuff like this, why don't we read stories about empowering us, like Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, and all this stuff? And I know that's super jarring, and I don't mean to be just banging on Christianity. These are just sort of Nietzsche's perspectives. This is applicable to all religions you can think about the world, or even all modern ideologies. Why are we focusing on things that are guilt orientated, why are we focusing on ideology instead of focusing on creating that charge? What creates that charge? Wealth, rituals of power, rituals of engagement of the body, rituals of persuading the body, rituals of putting the body in good shape. And this creates good charge, creativity, and this actually creates a better world. And this is what's so fascinating about this, is that this is actually quite nakedly true. Like, you see this with, for example, in the field of psychology. If someone's coming in and they might have, as you could say with Jung and stuff like that, they might be having psychosis or depression or something like this. They might be going through a crisis, if you will. And if you were a staunch Jungian, an ideologue in that type of sense, and you sit down with these people, you might try to force this whole idea of let's read your dreams and get you to talk to this right hemisphere and all this type of stuff and talk to your soul. And, there's maybe something to that, but you'll find, and I have plenty of experience with this, that the vast majority of people don't need to get actually caught up in a 10-year work with a therapist where they read through their dreams and all this type of stuff and go in these like long, convoluted circles that don't get them anywhere. Most people need to stop smoking weed, stop drinking Coca-Cola, stop eating pizza, and start eating cleaner food, start sorting their physiology out, go to the gym, learn a combat sport, get more fresh air, and go into nature. They need to increase their charge. This is usually the problem with most people. And no, this isn't even some kind of wacky theory either. There's very clear neuroscience on this type of stuff. For example, with the gut, the SSRIs is the chemical that most people give when you have depression. It's a drug. Now, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, that's what that is. That's designed to help you deal with depression. It fixes your serotonin levels in your brain. But of course, if you eat a clean diet that's healthy for your gut bacteria produces 95% of your serotonin. And so if you want to fix your charge, the neurochemistry is definitely going to affect your charge, well, correct your diet. There's project number one, this type of thing. And it sounds too reductive. People are like, no, I don't want that. I want it to be complicated. I want it to allow me to flatter my coping, rationalizing, delusional mind. I want that to be center stage because that's what I understand, because I'm a neurotic stuck in my head and I want it to be that way. And it offends me that you try and make stuff this simple. But of course, it doesn't matter what offends you or not. We're trying to talk about reality here. And this is about going down to principles and noticing what's going on. And it's very, very clear that, if you're eating a clean diet that is probiotic, gets your gut bacteria firing up and all this, you're going to have just more chemistry to try overcome this depression. It's going to be easier for you to make it happy. Maybe there's more to it. I'm sure there is. I'm sure it's a holistic picture. But you have to start getting down to these principles. You have to say to yourself, well, wait a second. If I'm trying to fix someone, do I really need to sit down there and smash them through 14 volumes of Carl Jung that's all just like elaborate conceptual rationalizations and try to get them to sit down and read through their dreams and all these type of things to tell them that they're trying, that the delusions they're having are trying to talk to something, when there's even studies going out that people with candida, people with fungus infections, people with bad probiotic things are more prone to schizophrenia than other people, these type of things. Why aren't we talking about this type of stuff? Well, of course, because that type of stuff usually takes only a month to fix you, whereas a long therapeutic process can take years, and years of paying a therapist in order to do this. It's very, very fascinating how that type of stuff works. And of course, this is a really, really, really serious problem, because this whole idea of fixing the charge and empowering the charge also has to flatter things like ambition and will and creativity. And these things are things that often people who get into therapy and work in psychology don't have, because if they did, they wouldn't be so concerned about something like operating as the priestly type. They wouldn't do that. The priestly type is usually uniquely reserved for people who are low charge, people who are stuck neurotically in their heads. Instead, these people would go along and they would go out into the business world, they go out into the athletics world, they go out into the fighting world, they go out into the creative world. They're trying to make stuff, they try to do stuff. Because if you're high charge, you're going to be tortured by the idea of sitting around blathering for decades with people not getting them anywhere. You'd be like, I want to create life, I want to create art. You would understand instinctively, you would say, if I create a great work of art, it's going to save more lives and inspire more people than sitting for 20 years as a therapist. If I want to inspire people, why don't I become an athlete or something like that and do things that no one has ever done before? That will inspire people, and this type of thing. These are very, very interesting and difficult problems that we have, and people can't confront them in these type of realms because it's so shocking to their sensibilities. It offends their identity. It offends this whole construction of a mind that they've created and all this type of stuff. And the reality is that Nietzsche's talking about this idea of this high charge, this will to power, this electricity, this energy, this animating force as fundamentally good. And all these desires inside of us, these ambitions, they're fundamentally good as well. And we should learn to almost be led by them. It's like these little pagan gods pushing us around in some type of sense. Just like the Muslims of the past or the Christians of the past, they would have that lust, and that lust would come out of them as a representation, a spiritualized version that allows them to coherently understand what it is. You'd have your lust would come out, and the Muslim would understand that as Allah's offer for you to have a harem if you are a good enough warrior for Allah. The Christian, the same thing. The Christians offered that you get a beautiful wife if you are subservient to God and Christ. And all these type of ideas pour out of it. But Nietzsche is asking us to entertain, you could say, a more mature and scientific and honest interpretation of our spiritual emotions. He's not saying deny them and become a primal grug at all. He's saying, why don't you just understand them what they are and order these passions in the correct way? Connect with your lust and say, well, what my lust wants is a very profound experience of fertility. It wants to be creative. And maybe I should just understand that for what it is, nakedly say what it is. Like, if we're going to be honest with ourselves and we dive down to this type of stuff, that's what it is. That's what's driving us. It's not this blather about like the ideology about how sexual relationship works. It's nothing to do with that. It's to do with what the actual passion says itself, and we should listen to that. No, we don't have to surrender to it, but we should be honest about what it wants. You should think about what it wants. Think about why life is driving this. Why does life want a man to procreate with lots of women? Because life would understand that most men don't procreate at all in nature. Most men die, and the best men have lots of girlfriends. This is also what the data says as well, and that's how things worked back then. And you should engage with nature in this type of way and understand nature's hierarchical way of working and all this type of stuff. And then your dreams and your ambitions, that part of your mind that thinks about creating stuff and changing the world and having your own ideas and building a whole new way of seeing things and building a whole new empire. These visions, these dreams, there's nothing wrong with this as well. This is life operating through you. This is you. The only reason you have these problems where you're tortured, where all your friends are watching fucking sports and all your friends are consuming crap food and sitting around and complaining and whining about the way that the famous people don't respect them and all this type of stuff. The reason why you're sitting there during this conversation being tortured, trying to scratch your fucking eyes out because this is so mundane, is because these people around you have low charge, whereas you've been blessed with a high charge. You just haven't disciplined yourself enough to manifest these dreams in a profound way. And so in order for you to fully do what is right, because you're the one who saves the world, your high charge your energy, that's the thing that saves the world. It's your job to try to release that creative energy to the highest level. You have to take the world on. You have to fight against the entropy of the world, the low chargers, the low will to power people, the people who are resentful and suck, the people who are sort of like consumerists and all that. You have to fight against that. You have to fight against these mistakes and create this stuff in your reality for you.